Hello, everybody. It is me, Pacific. Wow, bad hair day. So, couple things here, folks. As you see by the title of this, Antisocial Me? I'm anything but antisocial. But let's do a couple things before we get into that. Schultz, you cracked me up, saying taking on legalists is like having a one-legged man doing a butt-kicking contest. That's funny. In my video, True North, yesterday was not so much as addressing legalism as it was addressing a young lady that I deeply care about who is suddenly struggling with her faith because she thinks because she sinned that maybe she's not a Christian. Now, many of us have gone through that are Christians. We went through the period when you first became a Christian, you started doubting your salvation. So that was not so much as dealing with legalism, but I will tell you, she's really struggling with this whole thing. I said, so then, if you believe you're not a Christian, how do you believe you get to him? I don't know. And I simply told her, well, this is what you do. You acknowledge that you're a sinner. You acknowledge you can't live up to God's perfect commands, and you acknowledge that he died for your sins, and you ask him to be your Savior, and you ask him into your life, and you ask him to be your Lord. That's how you become a Christian. People laugh at me when I say that. They said, oh, come on, Pacific. That easy? Yep. But it's not that easy, especially if you've got pride, especially if you've been conditioned to believe that it's good works that will get you into the kingdom. I went to church this morning, and one of the preachers that I don't particularly care for preached this morning, and it was very hard to stay focused, and I did. But he did a sermon on Ephesians 1, 4 through 14. It was about as passionless as dead as it comes. And I'm sorry, I don't want people to take this wrong. Not everybody would listen to me, I realize that. But I feel like I have more passion than some of the people that are in America's pulpits, and I go, man, no wonder this place isn't growing and going forward. I want to do a shout out to my viewers. In the last couple of weeks and last night, I was fooling around on my YouTube. There's so many different places you can go in your own channel. Messages, inbox, community, blah, 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 blah. I apologize, but I've had a whole raft of messages that, again, I haven't gotten through, didn't even know were there. Some very personal things shared with me about how people feel that my channel has touched them. I want to thank my viewers for that. I don't take it for granted. But I also want to say and reiterate again, because I'm human, because I have a job, because I have a group of people that I do allow in my inner circle, I don't always get to all these comments. I don't want anybody to think I'm ignoring or shunning you. I obviously missed all these comments, and there's so many, and it's like, oh man. Please forgive me. I try to be different and try to reach out and touch my viewers personally as best as I can. It is not always easy. So if you feel that I'm ignoring you, I'm not. I am just a one-man band. I'm at the point now where I really wish I was making a living off of this and I could find a lovely woman to be my secretary and maybe a wife. But seriously, it would get to the point that I would have to have somebody also monitor some of this. It means something to me that my viewers care. You want to know what's sad? Welcome to cold Colorado. I go to church this morning. Before I went to church, went to Walmart. It's their anniversary, the couple, the house. I went and got them a gift. Got them a nice card. I went and walked 2.4 miles around a lake that I walk around. And it was decent weather. I go into church and it's cold. There's a couple people that are nice, but it's cold. I come out after the service and it's the polar plunge. I'm like, holy cow, the temperature dropped. And I don't like the cold. And I walk out to my truck and I thought, this cold weather today is just symbolic of this whole place. The church, the suburb, Denver, people. And I want to complain for a minute, so bear with me. When you have a guy like me that's full of passion and life and drive and energy, and you go out and even driving down the main drag, there's 2 accidents. One at this end where I turned off of an avenue and one off of that end. I'm like, it's Sunday, there's hardly any traffic, and we've got these big accidents. Somebody ran out of that red and creamed somebody. Somebody's truck is off to the side of the road with the back bumper ripped off, and the police doing a complete search of the SUV to hit it. And I was like, wow. For somebody like me, this culture scares me. That people in Colorado can be reduced to materialism, SUVism, petism, and coffeeism, and flaky shallowism. And it's like, how am I supposed to relate to that? My viewers, on the other hand, I talked to a gentleman, one of my viewers from Singapore today. We had a good Skype chat. 21 years old. And he doesn't have a high-paying job. His father's got a BMW. And he said, my dad drives crazy. Crazy. He said, I think of you every time I ride with him. He really speeds. He informed me that a Honda car in Singapore is going to cost somebody $150,000 because they're going to start charging a huge tax on the purchase of automobiles there to limit the number of people driving because Singapore's got too many people on the roads as it is. Boy, all of Asia ought to do that, and I'm starting to think that the U.S. ought to do it. If you don't get a standard pickup truck and a standard car and you buy SUVs, charge them $150,000. That'll quash the interest. I'm not making this up. I have women write me from America, other viewers write me, and they see the same thing. I feel that Denver's acute on this stuff, more so than other places. And it is tough. I went upstairs and sat on the balcony today, and before the service started, all the teenagers and 20-something-year-olds, they're not warm. They wear suits, the girls wear their dress, and you just see the look on their face. They'll turn around, glance at me, and look away, and there's no warmth. They're all raised in the Christian school, and the pastor's getting up there saying, we want to really reward our teachers because this Christian school is important for promoting values. And I'm like, yep. And all these kids are going to Christian school. They're learning how to dot their spiritual I's and cross their spiritual T's, and they're still rude, and they're still jerks, and they have no warmth. When kids on my school bus from inner city have more warmth and kindness towards me and talk to me and engage with me than the women and men at my church, there is a problem, Houston. People have said, and I've read, that people that spend too much time online are anti-social. We talk about social media, but can I submit to my viewers something? I am social media. My channel has become its own social network, its own social media. And do you know why that's happened? For the same reason you're watching it. More and more people are coming to the conclusion it's very hard to connect with a real society where you're presently located. I have married couples that watch my channel, or the wife will, or the husband will. I have most of the viewers that I have are in their 20s. The one in Singapore is 21 years old. We talked about how expensive it is in Singapore, and I said, let me guess. If I was over there and, lived in Singapore and I drove a bus or I worked as a store clerk, the Chinese Singaporean women probably wouldn't look at me. And he laughed and he said, they don't even look at me. It's all about the money. And what has happened is that has happened all over the place. I was walking around the lake. I see a blonde woman with her silly little capri pants stretching. And as soon as I start getting closer, then we feel the need to suddenly go run. You notice that today, men? That all these women act almost like you're a danger? I'm just walking down the trail, and the closer I get, then she suddenly feels the need to take off. And that happens all the time. Or if they're coming towards you, before they get about 20 feet from you, they suddenly pull out their phone and start putzing with it. Last night I heard a sermon by Dr. Stanley. I do not agree with his income level, but I want to tell you, I agreed with the message, and it was talking about God's timing. He went on to say that God has a plan for your life, and that if we get impatient and don't wait on the Lord and go ahead and do things, that we could get ourselves into a pickle. And I agree with that. I've done it. One of the problems we have in American culture is we don't want to wait. We want it now. TV dinner mentality. Hey, I can put it in the microwave in 30 seconds, be done with it. I don't want to spend all day cooking a dinner. Well, you get what you pay for. If you eat TV dinners all your life, you're going to have all kinds of health problems. But let me tell you something. Sundays are usually my most discouraging day. Yesterday I felt very good about doing that True North video. I'm very happy with how that came out. But can you put up with a little foolishness here? I know I'm not all that in a bag of chips. But when I listen to a preacher younger than me, a preacher with a real funny accent who was born right here in this country, and a preacher who walks across the parking lot, I got out of my truck, I looked right at him, he looks at me, and he turns away. Never has this guy smiled, welcomed me, said hello, nothing. And he's in charge of the teenagers at our church. He's the youth pastor. And I look at the way the teenagers behave, talking, rude, and I'm thinking, you know, I have better rapport with teenagers than this guy does, not these clowns at church. I started thinking very heavily this morning as I really struggled to listen to his message. He was talking about the riches we have in Christ in Ephesians 1, and I'm like, this guy is dead as they come. Everything is contrived. And I thought, man, if this guy had a YouTube channel, he would reach none of my viewers at all. The more time I spend on my social media, the more I've been encouraged by people like you, my viewers, that have come back and told me positive things. You're not looking at me with rose-colored glasses. You can't. You know I'm full of faults. But you've encouraged me to keep on keeping on. That you continue to tune in blesses me. And what blows me away is I would never go seek out this guy to listen to. I don't want to listen to him. To me, he's a fake. You're a pastor and you can't even be proactive. Hey, I've seen you a lot. How are you? What is it about a lot of American Christians like that? They're uptight, graduated from legalistic universities, and there's no warmth, there's no love, and there's no passion. I don't get it either. But when I sat there in church today, I thought, you know what? My preaching has more passion than his does. And I know we're not supposed to compare, but I thought, that same church would say, you're divorced, you can't be in the pulpit. I got news for you. YouTube is my pulpit. And you know what? God has blessed it. If I get 300, 400, 500 views on a video, that's a significant congregation of people. But I don't know if there'd be 3 to 500 people. Now, I'm not talking about church. But I wonder if you took that congregation and you took that preacher who spoke this morning, who's got this funny little way of talking, and it's not a speech impediment. You got to know. I'm like, oh gosh, will you quit that? He is uptight, he is rigid, and he's plastic, as are several of the young preachers up there. And I just don't see genuineness. I see an MO with every one of these guys. Me, I'm more rough cut. I say it like it is. And I noticed when he mentioned You know, we've seen what went on this week in Ferguson and Cleveland. I'm like, yep, you're not going to make a statement one way or the other about that, are you? Why not? I had a gentleman write me a comment that I need to share with you. He's living in Seoul, South Korea. He said, I went to church and the preacher was talking about marriage. And I think he said out of 1st or 2nd Peter. And he said, you know, it was really good, except when he got to the part about husbands, I noticed that he kept talking about domestic violence and lust, and how husbands need to love their wives. And he said, I've watched your videos, and I noticed he didn't say one word of rebuke or correction to the women in the marriage. I'm going to say something. Pacific is not antisocial. But when I look at our culture is antisocial as hell. What, Pacific? Everybody's textbooking? Yeah, Facebooking, texting. We all go to church. We're all friendly with our little clique. But that is a form of antisocial. Preachers that aren't real. If there is one thing that I want to tell my viewers is that I feel the fresh air blowing through me, that if I had the pulpit, I would convict that congregation right now. And if people got out and laughed, I'd say, good choice. Better you sit here and rot and contribute to the overall decay of this environment. And this church has now announced today they're adding a $5 million addition. I don't know what for. I'm like, for what? I have tried to be social in my world, and it is not working. Whether it's walking around a lake, going to my job, or going to church, there's no difference from one environment to the other. But I come here to YouTube. I've had women tell me that I'm good looking. I've had women say, I really like your honest realness. In the last week, I've had several black women say, I really like your channel, even after hearing my views on the Ferguson issues and knowing that I'm not racist. And now we got this debate going back and forth. Just because you date a black woman doesn't mean you're not racist. I will dispute that to the end. If I have racism on skin color, I'm not going to date a black woman. Hello? That is the most ridiculous bunch of malarkey I have ever heard. Granted, I know black men that are racist against white men, but they have no problem dating, having sex with, impregnating, and then beating up white women. That's not the same as Pacific having an interest in a black woman and thinking, wow, their skin is beautiful, and I like the fact they're different, not the ghetto kind. Racism needs to be defined as hating a race of people based on their ethnicity, the color of their skin, etc. If I was racist, I wouldn't date a black woman or an Asian woman or a Mexican woman. I would stick to my own kind. I know people that are racist, and they wouldn't even consider dating a black woman. I've even held up a picture and said, isn't she beautiful? Oh, man, I don't like black people. Now, that's racism. I watch some of the stuff that goes on in my channel, and sometimes I'm just laughing at some of the stupidity of some of the stuff. And I just go, man, these people just don't get it. But whether I date a black woman or not, I've still said enough stuff that proves I'm not racist, and people either A, refuse to listen to the whole video and get that, or they just want to hear what they want to hear, and they're going to run off with a conclusion, whether they're right or wrong. And we know a lot of people doing that. Ferguson, Missouri did that. They wanted everybody to know they was in the house with their stampeding and burning and tearing everything up, that we wet our panties and we don't agree with the verdict. Okay. When I hear people preach, I listen. I got more out of Sunday school than I did the morning service, sadly. I look around at my own white culture of people, and one of the reasons that they're dead even in the church is something that the church ignores. We talk about idolatry, and we think of people bowing down to little deities on a stick or, Buddha statues or whatever. But what we don't take into account is that idolatry can be just materialism. Idolatry can be getting deeply into debt to buy a truck, an SUV, a house way bigger than you need, beyond the budget that you can afford. That's idolatry. Filling your house with stuff and trinkets is idolatry. And in my American culture, in the white people that I've grown up with, I've watched them. They go to church because it's something to do. They know proper theology. But when it comes down to fleshing out a living, vibrant, passionate faith, they're unable to do it. Because God is not preeminent in their life. I'm not saying they're not Christians, but they're dead. We've raised virtually every young, good-looking white girl to be self-centered and narcissistic. I've watched in a church. I watched in ours. The choir sits behind the pastor. They're out there at the front of the church, and they're facing the church. I have watched as the pastor is giving announcements or preaching, and I'll watch several choir women my age. If I was a preacher, I would say, hey, how rude can you get? And it's women that do it. And it's always women that do it. Women talk to their husbands. Women talk to other women. The teenage girls of 20. Well, yes, I'm going to college. Hey, this isn't college, it's church. You can talk about your classroom stuff out the door there. And what bothers me is not one of those parents or those adults sitting up in the balcony. He says, hey, could you knock it off? And so when I do it, I was talking to my friend in Florida on the phone the other day. I told him about this, and he says, I agree with everything you're saying, but when you're sitting up there, all those young people feel like that's their territory, and you're coming in telling them to be quiet. And I said, nobody else is doing it. But isn't it sad that even teenagers and young adults would think, hey, this is our territory. What's he telling us to be quiet for? Because it's church. And do you know how many cell phones I heard ringing going off this morning? Yep, women. Why is it that American women think their business is so much more important, the preacher and the carrying-ons in a church, than anybody else? I mean, it is a problem. Then I come to my channel, my one refuge in the middle of this cold Arctic Ocean called Colorado. There is no warmth down here. None. I had a discussion with the lady of the house yesterday. She said, you're doing an awful lot of work on the property. Why aren't you taking a day off and doing something? I said, there's nothing to do out there. I said, aren't you glad I'm getting all that? She goes, no, we're blessed. I said, I don't have any friends here. That's why. You know, the term friends in Colorado is pretty loosely held. And without thinking, she says, well, maybe you need to learn how to become friends with people. And I said, come now, I'm 48 years old. I said, I think you know me well enough to know I'm pretty outgoing. I said, I'm not trying to be rude, but look at your age. You've got your husband and your circle of friends. But do you know what has been going on in the culture my age on down in the last umpteen years? Well, why don't you try different churches? I said, I've tried that. I even went to the ones that you went to. You thought it was so spiritual and so full of the Holy Spirit. And I said, those people were utterly rude. I said, remember the church secretary came on to me? And we went out a few times, and then she wanted me to go to the pastor and tell the pastor about my life in Hong Kong and, you know, my exes and all that. And I said, no. She would not date me because of that. She wanted pastor's permission and his approval of whether she should date me. And I said, If you can't make that decision with you and God, I said, what do I need to go in there and blow my guts out about my life? And she was rude. She wrote emails from the church office to me that were not very nice. And I left. I said, you know what? The church secretary's behaving this way. There was a couple sitting behind me. They looked like they were from the 70s. He was balding, pot gutted, had that arrogant look. She had the long hair like the 1970s, stuck up. I remember the greeting time came. This was at Redeemer Temple in Arvada, Colorado. And I said, I turned around to shake their hand. They looked right at me and whirled around and didn't want to talk to me. One day I was asked to pass out the communion. And wouldn't you know, I have to hand them the thing, and they both looked at me with a very unkind look. What the heck did I ever do to these two? Folks, I'm going to tell you something. When I told you yesterday that when I got saved, within 24 hours, my mother did even, she'd always been a problem to me, but she really got worse within 24 hours of my conversion. And I've noticed even as a saved Christian, I've had, I'm going to call it attack. I've had persecution by shallow, immature Christians for no due cause. I'm going to tell you a little story about Redeemer Temple. There's a Mexican woman who sits in a wheelchair. She's a little boisterous during the service. Praise Jesus. She always greeted me. Come here, honey. She kissed me right on the lips. And most people think she's cuckoo. Do you know she was nice? She was real. And all the so-called normal people in there, cold as ice. Nobody even tried to make me feel welcome. I went to Sunday school week after week. When I left the church, not one person called and said, where are you? We miss you. Not one. I was there for about 9 months. I am not antisocial. In fact, something hit me just yesterday. I am more social on this internet than I'm able to be in the society. I actually talk to people. I spent 5 hours talking to a woman from the UK, a black woman, 40 years old. A really neat woman. She plays the cello. She's a psychic. And everybody knows I don't agree with that. She even showed me her tarot cards, and I said, please tell me you don't have tarot cards. Do you know why she watches my channel? She said, I don't see real people anymore. And when I listen to you, I'm like, my gosh, I get it. This guy's talking about the way things used to be. He's talking about this. He's talking about that. Her English is perfect. She's got a British accent. Nothing like the ghetto black girls I work with. Not even close to like that. Classy. Nice looking. Carries herself much better than what I see in the stateside. I talked for an hour to a gentleman who lives in Singapore. He is Asian. He said he likes my channel. He said, I actually had a dream that I was on a school bus trying to meet the Pacific. I said, oh my gosh. I said, I'm not a rock star, man. I'm humbled by this because it's young people. And what really is shocking me is I'm just being myself out here, saying what I believe is from my heart, and even white women in the U.S. are writing me and saying, you know, I see what you're saying about women in our culture, and I agree with you. Christian women, Larissa and Southern Belle and others. You can throw all the damn trolls at me you can throw at me, and they're all full of it. I'm not racist. I'm not misogynistic. But people aren't speaking up. People aren't talking about this crap. They'll do it behind closed doors with their own ethnicity. Meaning white people go, oh, do you see the way all them black people acting? Blah, blah, blah. I lost a viewer because he feels I hate black people. When Someday Dreamer, who's from Canada, who's black, even gets on my channel and says Pacific's not racist. If he thought I was racist, he would shut it down and he would be out of here. Venus Star doesn't think I'm racist. There's quite a few people that get on my channel. I don't know if any of you saw. But a black man made a channel, Why I Like Pacific Ocean Asia. That was made just within the last 2 weeks. I was shocked. I didn't even expect that. Because the reason my channel is being received is because this is not a white man channel. This is not a born-again Christian man channel. This isn't a click legalist channel. This is about an American guy who's grown up and sees dysfunction at all levels in myself and in our culture and in the world at large. And we talk about it. We talk about the elephant in the room. We don't just pretend not to see it. This channel is international because people from all over the world tune in. Why? Because a lot of people in their own society are rejected, laughed at, don't make the big money. Now, actually, we're not antisocial at all. We're very social. Because of the blessing of the internet, we're able to find people that we can't normally find in our culture and society, because people like me, people like you are sprinkled all over the globe. But most likely the town or city you're living in, you're not going to find those kind. I told the lady at the house yesterday, I said, you can have me go to every church in this town and it will be the same story. I've been to dozens of churches across the metro. Aurora, Inglewood, Lakewood, Westminster, Wheat Ridge, Arvada, Evergreen, you name it. And you know what? I've told you there's a fingerprint to every town, every city in America, and Colorado has its own unique fingerprint. Extremely aggressive. Women are obnoxious and rude and in your face and will tell you F you. You're telling me, Pacific, that all women are like that? Not all, but a lot. The culture that I live in has driven me online. And even when I was involved with Beth wanted to do all this stuff online, and at the time I'm like, I don't want to live online. I want to be with somebody. And you know what? It's not for lack of trying. I tried an experiment. I responded to several what seemed like nice ads. A 55-year-old white woman who had a horse. She said, I just want a simple guy. I wrote her, no response. I've written several women last week just to experiment. None of them responded to my post. None. Or my response to their post. Well, maybe they're not interested in you. I have had women on my channel that are better looking than any of the women I have seen on Colorado dating sites tell me I'm good looking, and if they were here, they would date me. And Colorado women snub their nose at me. Or in the case of my workplace with the ghetto girls I work with, have made comments that I've had to turn around and say, you know, that was rude. And trust me, if I wasn't in the workplace, I'd let them have it and say, if you looked in the mirror, fatty, don't you dare judge me. You're not attractive in any way, shape, or form, be either internally or externally, and you're looking down on me, go back to the ghetto and shut up. That's not very Christ-like. I understand that, but you know, I'm making a point. You go to an evangelical church, They wear the right clothes. They go to the right Christian school. They hear all the right stuff. And yet something is big time wrong. Their personality sucks. They're not warm. They don't use manners except in their little bitty circle. The girls are still stuck up, narcissistic, self-centered. You can see it in their faces. And I come away from that going, Jesus really isn't changing people. The culture is the great teacher. The culture in that church is more prevalent than the culture of Christ. And Pacific's at a weird spot. 48 years old. I don't have family. I don't have a clique to belong to. And what we're seeing in America today is people have their little groupie, their little circle, and they don't make room for anybody else. Not that I'd want to be part of it anyway. I don't. So then I come home, turn on my YouTube, and I see all the comments and people, will you add me? Will you call me? Will you write me? Can I Skype you? And I don't. There's too many requests. I would be getting hammered all day on Skype. The minute it opens up and says available, I'd have 50 million people saying, oh, hi. And then what would happen is somebody would get butthurt because I'm not responding. So I deliberately kept a dam against that lake and said, I have a sluice gate. And there's some people I'll let through it and the rest no. And my viewers, you can't take that personally. It's not fair to you to spread myself so thin that I never contact you if I add you because I can't or I don't have the time. And there's always the danger of some people wanting to dominate your time. Some people that I know, once they get on Skype, there's no shutting down. It'll go on and on and on and on and on and on. And it's like, hey, I gotta go now. It's tough because the message I'm getting from every one of you is you can relate. Isn't it sad that all of us aren't in the same village? Just think how nice that would be. And yet we can't be. God has scattered us all over the place. I've gotten tougher as this channel's grown. I used to be bothered by some of the troll comments, and once in a while something's really offensive and it gets to me, but more and more I'm just starting to shake my head and go, loser. And I have no problem. Block, ban from channel. And the reason I have that confidence is because I have enough people telling me that tune in all the time and want and can't wait. The gentleman from Singapore says, I like your longer videos. In the beginning, some complained, hey, this is 45 minutes. This is too long. I had to make a decision. Do I cater to a soundbite culture or do I be who I am and see who's really following the channel? And I learned something. People who want to hear what I have to say, whether it's 10 minutes long or 10 hours long, are going to tune in. So stop trying to play the time game. The nice thing about this channel is it's real. It's genuine. And I thank my viewers that care and write nice things to me and encourage me and pray for me. I'm asking you to pray for one of my viewers who's really struggling with her faith and that whole issue I talked about yesterday. Because that's serious. People need to be grounded in the truth of God's word and not unsettled and thinking, oh, I've sinned. I must not be a Christian. If there's one thing I'm seeing in evangelicalism in the U.S., there's a lot of people professing to be Christians, and they're not very nice at all. And people, some just say, well, they probably don't know Jesus. I wish it was that easy, but that's not necessarily the truth. Just because a person gets saved, you're forgetting they still live with their family. They still have their circle of friends. They're still caught up in this materialistic culture. And if they don't get mature discipling, they will continue to be Christian yucks. They're redeemed yucks, but they're yucks. And unfortunately, we've got a plethora of those today. We got a Christian culture that ignores the sins of women. Most preachers today in America don't have the balls to confront today's women. If I was a pastor, I would say, I want to say something very clear to my congregation, and I want to direct it towards the women. And I would have no problem leaning down on that pulpit and saying, women, I don't mean to be rude, but if your business is so important that you need to talk in church while announcements are being made, while the special music is going on, while the preacher's preaching, and while somebody's praying, you get up quietly and leave the building. American women are not getting the message. And that proves to me that American men are afraid of offending so-called ladies. And because we continue to do this, we enable them to get worse and worse and worse. And women know this. Watch what happens when an American male stands up to a snot-nosed brat woman. Watch the endless junk that comes your way. I've given you examples. One right in Aurora, Colorado. Because no other man has the balls to tell them what they need to hear. They won't. What you have with white women and even some black males and people, Americans in general, is you'll have, a good-looking woman and all these guys are going, man, I'd like to get down her pants. And one guy stands up and says, why would you want to get down her pants? She's stuck up. She's narcissistic. And she hears that and gets all upset. And one man who's going to suddenly play the knight in shining armor, you're a jerk. I can't believe you'd say that to her. She's really hot looking. She's really nice. She's a jerk, dude. And the woman says, oh, this guy's defending me. He's really cool. Lame. Guys that are defending women like that have an agenda to get some. The thinking in America is so screwed up today that all these good-looking women actually think there's nothing wrong with them. That is a fact. They don't look at the fact they're dyeing their hair and obsessed with their Nazi physical fitness workout and obsessed with their materialism and snubbing guys and being rude. And then you hear a sniveling Pamela Anderson say, all I wanted was love. No, you did not. You wanted money and you wanted people to spoil you and treat you like a princess. And now that you're old and your big boobs are sagging down to the basement, nobody wants you, now you're upset. Well, you got what you deserve, toots. What goes around comes around, and it will happen to every one of these spoiled brat good-looking girls. When they're 60 years old, guys aren't going to be going crazy for them anymore. Have you ever looked at the women on The View? Look at Kathy Lee Gifford. Look at all these women in the media circles. Do you know how much makeup and Botox and all the tox and the breast implants and all the stuff they're doing to themselves? And everybody says, wow, she looks great for her age. Well, you peel off all that paint and Bondo and nips and tox. Not so pretty. We're literally manufacturing beauty, and it's not beauty. I am more moved by a young woman who has no makeup on, who doesn't have to add to her breast size. I mean, I don't get it. When women moved away from just taking care of themselves and natural beauty and spending hundreds of millions and billions of dollars on a cosmetic industry and hair dyes and everything else, that alone should have told all of us males, you don't want these women. I was at the Vietnamese restaurant the other day, and one of the Vietnamese women has got her face caked with the foundation makeup, got the dark eyeliner up here and all that, and the long extended eyelashes. She looks completely plastic. Hi, how are you doing? Ha! Boob showing, the whole thing, and I'm going, who wants a woman like that? most men that want to get down their pants, but you're not going to have a relationship with that of any quality. I'm a Barbie girl in a Barbie world. Barbie was always overrated. I remember when I had to do the judging in Siam Poom in Hong Kong for the beauty pageant and all the different dress and themes. One of them was Barbie girl. And I'm rolling my eyes going, it's a Barbie girl in a Barbie world. I'm like, and then I watch them as they walk off doing the parade wave. And I'm like, oh my gosh. When women are behaving the way they're behaving in our culture, when men are not being men, from the pulpit to the pickup truck to their homes. Let's talk about the American male, shall we? Let's talk about the way they drive and how they believe it's okay to get in debt and define themselves with that jacked up 4x4 or their retard Rover or their Toyota 4Runner. People aren't defining themselves by themselves anymore. They're defining themselves by their stuff, by their music, by their titles. And we have no character, no integrity, and no quality, no warmth, and no passion. And I'm going to tell you something. I've said it before, and I'll say it again. Materialism is immaturity. Materialism causes huge, rampant social retardation from evangelical churches to all across America. The Americans worship their houses, worship their status, worship their dogs and their SUVs, and I attack this over and over again because it is an obsession. Finding people like myself that have a passion for life and have a passion for interesting people and want to get deep. And I'm getting tired of Americans going, yeah, I just bought my new SUV. You want to go for a ride with me in the mountains? No, I don't. Because if that's going to make you feel good about yourself, that you're in a new ride and that you want me to just sit there and go, wow, that's really cool. You got this really cool ride. Wow. I mean, what is the difference between that and overt idolatry? Nothing. I like talking to my international friends and my YouTube friends that are all international and or scattered throughout the United States that actually see the things I see and are tired of all this stuff. I'm thankful for that. No, I'm not antisocial at all. Our world has become antisocial, especially Western nations. Talk to Maharani about Australian culture. It is disgusting. Australian men want big-boobed white girls that drink beer and walk around with their bikinis on. And then they sneer at her. She hates it there. She said, I have tried for 7 years to fit in, not fit in, but be accepted. And she said, I feel so awkward here. I dress plain. I'm small-breasted. I don't drink. I don't want to be around that. She was standing down at the train station in Melbourne one day waiting for the train home. And a bunch of teenage white boys came at her and yelled and screamed and tried to scare her. And I thought, what a bunch of freaking punks. That's what Western cultures have become. Boys are not taught to be men. When I was a kid, you didn't harass women. That wasn't manly behavior. That was liable to get you punched by other males and get your butt kicked. She's had racial epithets yelled at her, lewd comments. Nobody should go through that is minding their own business. I told her, I said, I'm glad I wasn't on that platform because I would have said, yeah, you little punks. You think you're tough? Walking up and scaring a girl? What a bunch of geeks. I go to church on Sunday morning and I feel frigidness coming from the teens, the young adults, and the adults. We've got a youth pastor that has no passion. He can't even smile at me and say hi and be assertive and aggressive. You know, most pastors I used to know, they would see somebody, they know, hi, how you doing? I've seen you at church a few times. How do you like that? Those days are gone. I mean, there's churches that still do it to some degree, but these younger people, I'm like, this guy is a minister. And I look at the kids that he's youth grouping and they're putzes. I'm sorry, but I'd be challenging my teens and say, you know what? If you guys are not interested in being here, get up and go home. I want people to have an infectious passion for Jesus. And if you're bored of this and you don't want to be here, I am giving you permission to leave. And if your parents call me, I will talk to them. I'm not using the youth group as a form of babysitting for you, and I will make that crystal clear to the parents. And for those of you that call yourself Christian, I'd like to see you show passion for people that are not just like you. I hate to tell you, teenagers in America, it's not about you, and the world does not revolve around you, and you're not making history, and you didn't fight any wars, and you didn't go and farm the food. You haven't done anything. And one thought that went through my mind today with most of today's good-looking American women, I would challenge everybody on my channel to tell me what most good-looking American women are contributing to society for its collective good. Nothing. They're consumers upon themselves. Materialistic, stuck up, self-centered. They act like jerks behind the wheel. They act like jerks at church. And I started thinking about that. And yet, if you tell these women that, they would be offended. Hey, you got issues. They don't think there's anything wrong with them. They think that their little world and their little job and everything is so important. It's like, but you're not doing anything. You're not doing a darn thing. You're not helping anybody improve. Yeah, but I work and I'm responsible. Big deal. A lot of people work and are responsible. Ooh. But let me ask you this. Are you changing lives? Are you encouraging young women to dress appropriate and be polite and kind? No. Most parents in the U.S. today are simply passing the baton of the same old BS to their children that they're guilty of. Addicted to television, addicted to media, entertainment, addicted to materialism, SUVs, and teach their children it's okay to get in debt, and then push for them to go to college, and many Christian parents push their kids to go to college. I know kids that have looked at me with dirty looks, whose parents are in charge of the Christian school, whose parents teach, whose parents are deacons, and I just look and I go, what are they giving me that steel-eyed punk look for? I've never done anything to them. Because mom and dad aren't modeling real Christianity. They're modeling religion. And those kids are waiting for the time when they get out from that, and guess what? They will shed it all like snakeskin. Viewers, you know I'm not antisocial. I would love to get off the computer 100%. In my 20s, I didn't have one. People talk about computers, but to me, they were just so far, it's like boring. I remember when I drove the bus, the little church bus for Emmanuel Baptist Church in Duluth. And there was a guy that rode my bus, a few years younger than me, Darren. And I mean, every Sunday, oh, and Mike on my computer. I mean, he was obsessed with his computer. That was back in the 80s. There was no internet. There was you couldn't really do anything on a computer. You know, you could print out your paper. Green phosphorus, man. Woohoo. Or you could print a letter or print out your book report or whatever. But the computer has become a tool for me to say what I feel I need to say and want to say. I am asking God. I know I have to wait on your time, God, but could you please deliver me from Colorado? Well, Pacific, you got the money. Hold it, viewers. I don't want to go until God opens doors, because I've learned the hard way. Yes, I could get in my truck and move, but I don't want to go from bad to worse. I want God to open doors. I want to see his hand in my life, and I want to see him make opportunities. And you know what hit me? I actually like preaching. I did it in Spokane, and I actually looked forward to it. The way people drive and the way society is, I don't want to drive. I like driving the bus, but I get tired of the crap I see all day, every day, and I want to get out of it. And I don't want to work at Lowe's or Home Depot for $9 an hour wearing a suit. Hi, welcome to Lowe's. Can I help you? I'm not putting that down. But there's a plethora of $10 or less an hour jobs, and it's like, God, could you please use me for something else instead of just making eking out an existence with a job I don't really care for? I will let my viewers know something. My eyesight is changing. I don't know what's going on. It's not huge, but it's significant. And in December, I'm going to go to an ophthalmologist and get some eye exams and see if he sees anything. But in March, my DOT physical's up, and if I don't pass the eye test, my CDL goes. I can drive my pickup, but my commercial driving days will be over. I want my viewers to know something, because I hesitated saying this because there's a bunch of idiots and loser trolls who go, "Hey, retard's going blind." No, I'm not going blind. People are mean, and people in America get off at others' misfortune. And I heard that message by Stanley last night saying, why do we worry? God loves you, and he has a plan for your life, and he will take care of you. Do you know what I've been doing in the last few months that I haven't told you about? Worrying. God, if I lose my job and I don't drive, what am I going to do? I don't want to work at Lowe's. I don't want to work at Home Depot. I don't want to put junk away in a back room for $9 an hour. And Stanley said over and over, trust God. Wait on him. Trust God. I don't want to do voiceovers on radio, folks. I want God to open a door. Allow me to tell you a story. Okay, I don't believe you should just sit on your butt and do nothing. Look at this. I got a Dennis the Menace thing going on here. 2005. When I was married, I was a stay-at-home dad. In 2005, I enrolled my son in his preschool. All-day preschool. And I finally thought, oh, yes, he's off to school. But I was home all day going. And I didn't tell anybody, but I said, I wish I could find a job that I could get my son, take him to school, go to work, get off work, get my son from school, have weekends off and school holidays off. That's a true story. None of this is fabricated. Now let me back up. In 1999 to 2001, I worked at Mountain State Truck Center on the edge of Commerce City, Denver. I worked there 2 full years. Full-time, I had medical benefits for all 3 of us. Let me tell you how much damage Obama has done to the healthcare industry. That was a truck dealership. And I had Kaiser, my wife, myself, and my son, all 3 of us, and all I paid out of my paycheck a month for 3 of us to be fully insured by Kaiser, which was great medical. We're talking $20 office visit, $10 copay for meds at the pharmacy, or prescriptions, if you needed them. $78 a month, $99 to 2001. Today, for me, right now, to go get Kaiser that covers that, and we're looking at $500, $600, $700 a month. Ridiculous for one person. Because employers aren't going to give you that anymore, unless they're huge. So, 2005 comes along. I've been a stay-at-home dad. My son's now in school, and I'm not going to sit in the house all day. One day I get a call from a Mr. Fanning. I didn't know who he was. Yeah, Mike, this is Mr. Fanning. I'm down here at, International Truck and Engine. And wondering if you'd be interested in a job. And I'm like, how did this guy know my number? I didn't put out any applications. I called him back, talked to him for a minute, and he mentioned one of his sales guys. I said, yeah, he worked at the Mountain State Truck Center. He said you were one of the best workers he's ever seen. And he told me, he says, you said you need help around the dealership. I recommend you call Michael. I don't know what he's doing. I think he's taking care of his kid or something, but he might be able to help you. And I told Mr. Fanning, I said, well, I am a stay-at-home dad, but my son is in school. I need to drop him off at school by 8, and then I can come to work, and I could give you 6 hours a day, but I need school holidays off and the summers off. I want to tell you about the hand of God, viewers, because this is real. He didn't pause. He didn't hesitate. He says, no problem. Let's do it. Why don't you come in tomorrow? I just got to have you fill out an application and W-4 statement or W-2 or whatever it is. And how soon can you start? I said, how about this week? He says, sounds good. $15 an hour, 6 hours a day, moving trucks around, CDL trucks. The guy that I worked under, not the boss who hired me, but he's still my friend, an atheist, who said he liked me because I was contrary to other Christians he had known. He says, you don't just believe anything. And though he didn't agree with my Christian beliefs, he said he respected me, my work ethic, and the fact that I questioned things. He still talks to me. God opened the door. Can I be honest? I struggle with this going out and putting in applications. I hate it. And God knows that that is a complete foolish waste of time in today's culture. You can paint the town the color of your application and not get one frickin' response. Kind of like the dating sites. And you know what I've done? I've said, Lord, I need you to lead me. When God is in charge of your life, when a person remembers me at the right timing, tells his boss, you said you need help with the truck lot, here's Pacific's number. He's a good worker. And I get a call out of the blue, and he happens to agree with my schedule. Now, that is not the normal workplace. The normal workplace mentality is you come here when we want you to be here, and if you can't do it, you don't have a job. I can give you 6 hours a day. I got to drop my son off at school, then I go straight to work for you, and then I got to get off an hour before he gets out so I can get to his school on time, and I need school holidays off in the summers. No problem. Come on in. Even my then wife was stunned. You didn't even put out any applications or nothing. I said, no. Maybe I'm stupid in your eyes, viewers. But I'm praying that God would move his hand so that I know in no unmistakable terms that it is God and not me striving and manipulating things into play. Can I tell you that I've done that with women? I wanted to be married because I was told sexual sin was so bad and struggling with lust was so bad, and I just shotgun married a woman in 5 weeks, the one that I was married to for 14 years. And then the first week of that marriage told me I had made a huge boo-boo. The first week. When I sat down to discuss one day in 2005 when I had a huge, nasty fight with my wife, it was on the way home from church, I'll tell you what, it was bad. She was just so angry and yelling that I was yelling, and I'm driving and my hands are going like this. I had an 81 Chevy truck with a flat glass black, the back window, no tinting. So everybody in traffic could see us, and they're kind of pulling around us, looking at us. Are you all okay over there? No, I'm not okay. Don't look at me. I get back to the house, and I'm trying to get away from her, and I go into the walk-in closet to take a breather. She follows me back around, and she starts in, and I said, I knew the first week we're married that I had made a bad decision. Oh my gosh. She really blew. Why did you stay with me this long then? Why? I said, because you and our friends and our church believe divorce is totally, totally wrong. Even though you're divorced from a previous and I'm divorced from a previous. And I said, I tried to make my bed. I made it, and I tried to sleep in it. And I figured you got to bite it and deal with it. Most evangelical churches in the U.S. don't support this view, but I'm going to tell you a viewpoint I have. Unless the Lord builds a house, they that labor to build it labor in vain. The Bible also says, what God has joined together, let not man separate. We don't think about that verse very much. We use that as a bludgeon. You can't divorce what God has joined together. Let not man. Hold it. When I married the woman of 14 years, I rushed. We were encouraged to go get counsel from the pastor. We went to one appointment, and I said, we don't need this. You're going to learn something about Pacific. I did not do everything right. Well, duh, we know that. But I didn't do everything right, even when I tried to be more committed to Christ. When I wanted something, I figured, well, you know what? Marriage is tough. Deal with it. Be a man and move on. That sounds really cool, doesn't it? How ignorant I was. I didn't even learn about something called compatibility, passion. I learned in 14 years this woman I'm married to is a shopaholic, addicted to Target, LL Bean, Land's End, Eddie Bauer. The boring stuff of a dying American culture obsessed with American materialism. I didn't even bother to look at her spiritual commitment to Christ was a joke. And then she starts reading Joyce Myers and all this other crapole, and I said, what are you reading this for? We were unequally yoked, big time. I had a solid grounding in theology. She did not. And even though my mother screwed up and was abusive, and my father was passive and abusive as well, passive to her, blown over like a dandelion in a hot, scorching wind. Did you know that my parents live in two separate buildings? My mother had an addition added onto their house and put him in it. And I already told you that. Well, the apple falls not far from the tree because her grandparents, she was so angry at him that he finally moved into the backyard in a tent. How come we let women do this to us? Why? So when I said in the closet, I knew the first week I'd made a mistake. Did you know that she wanted a divorce right then and there? And I said, that's fine. I called my friend in Minnesota, the one of 14 years, and told him. And he says, if you get divorced, you're sinning. I said, I'm not the one doing it. She's the one. Yeah, but you're encouraging. I said, I did not. But I'm not going to fight to stay with her, Jeff. Oh, he read me the riot act. You see, this is the kind of Christianity after I got saved I was surrounded by. You're breaking covenant. What God has joined together. I said, then you talk to her, Jeff. He did. He did. I'm sorry, that was 2004. Excuse me. We lasted 3 more years. And then things got even worse. And do you know what I had to do? I had to think about everything. You know, if you divorce her, you're going to lose this guy as a friend, this guy as a friend. The whole church is going to be against you. You are going to be left out in the cold by all the people that know you. And you want to know what happened? I was in my 40s finally, and I said, oh well. The friendship I have with some of these guys, I finally learned are kind of dysfunctional. My one friend puts me down, builds himself up by making fun of me, and I was so naive and stupid then that I thought he was a real friend. He wasn't. I watched this man who told me because he was a converted homosexual and he was with his wife who was staying with him, but she couldn't stand his belief in God, and he would complain about her every single day for the 14 years I knew her, crying in church, shedding tears, telling me that divorce is wrong, but I can't stand my wife. I said, then leave her. I can't, Pacific. God wouldn't honor that. Well, I don't think he's going to honor you carping about it for 14 years. Didn't get through to him. When I finally made the decision, I finally said, no matter what comes, I'm out of here. I'm done with this. There's also a verse in the Bible that says, as far as it depends on you, live at peace with all men. As far as it depends on you. When you can't, when there is strife constantly in your home, I'm sorry, you got a choice. And I told my viewers, I'm not a violent man, but I admitted something that a lot of women in this culture would shudder at. Oh my gosh! American women, a lot of American women, by their foul attitudes, their disrespect of males, has caused a lot of men to be very provoked and pushed into a corner. And can I say something? I do not believe violence against women is right, but I do know this. When you exasperate your husband and you're rude and mean and nasty and foul to him over and over and over, don't be surprised if one day he finally snaps and decks you. The straw that broke the camel's back for me, viewers, was when I came home to Virginia, Minnesota, standing in our remodeled 50s house that I'd put my blood, sweat, and tears in, and we had some discussion about something. She'd gone to Target again and bought 10,000 Tupperware containers or something, and I said, you know, this is ridiculous. I didn't yell and scream. I didn't start out that way. But she would ramp up, be childish, immature, junior high style, nye, 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 nye. And she was on a roll. And yes, at that point I would raise my voice because she's yelling and being very childish. She was older than me, with a degree in psychology, an LPN, and paralegal for, law firms. More professional prowess than me. And yet my child raising skills and my involvement with children was much more efficient and effective than hers was. Her philosophy of child raising was spoil the child every single day. Buy him toys, take him to McDonald's, buy him toys, take him to McDonald's, and this was going on and on. And for Pacific, for all the accusations that were made about how terrible I was never a dictator. I said, hey, do you really think you should be taking him out to eat all the time? Now, granted, I was with my son all day, so when she got home, sometimes I liked it that she took him out, because that was my break. I could listen to my music and sit down in a chair and just go, oh. But the determining factor to leave the marriage, there was many, but the straw that broke the camel's back is when that argument ensued. For the first time, I finally felt, I have had enough of this woman. And this woman has totally disrespected me to the point of no return, and the only way to shut her up is if I were to put my fist through her face and drill it through the back of her head into the wall. When that thought went through my head, it was immediate that my mind said, get a divorce. Don't touch her. Get her out of your life. Most preachers today love to pull the focus on the family bullcrap and say, well, you can restore the love that's been lost. That's bull. If God joins a couple together, then that is true. But if a couple gets married to each other outside of the will of God, without consulting God, without submitting to God, don't expect that to work. We cannot put God in a box. Stranger things have happened. King David sinned with Bathsheba. God took the child that she initially got pregnant with David on. But then God blessed her with Solomon, who was to build the temple and be in the lineage of Jesus Christ. One might ask, why did God do that? Because God is a God of grace, and he can take our broken, messed up lives and turn it into something good. But that is not always the precedent. You cannot do something and say, well, even if I sin, maybe God will fix it up later. No, sometimes he doesn't do it. 14 years of me feeling like a cage. My ex-wife said this. You were like a caged animal. Yeah, I was. Rigidly trying to follow and dot my spiritual I's and cross my T's, and inside hating my marriage. I had no lust for her. I had no love for her. I had nothing. The last 7 years of our marriage, we had no intercourse. Yes, TMI, I know that. I lived downstairs in a bedroom in the basement. I didn't want to sleep with her. I didn't want to be around her. And yet I still did things with her. I'd still take her in the car before we had the truck, we had a car, and I'd take her in the car, the truck, and take her to the stores on Saturday, take her to the Christmas Day or the Black Friday deals and this and that. But internally, I was dying. And when she had provoked me so much that I thought the only way to shut this woman up is to lay her out flat, that's when I said, okay, divorce is wrong, but so is violence. Do I hit this woman and go to jail and have my son see a violent father? Or do I divorce this woman and still keep my integrity? A lot of Christians would say, well, you shouldn't do either. I'm so sick of stupid little pat answers that, yes, the grace of God is going to escape my life because I finally said, God, I can't handle this. I don't want to be with her. I see the foolishness of my decision, and it hasn't worked in 14 freaking years, and I stayed in it. She changed her mind in 2004 because my friend Jeff laid into her. Interestingly enough, typical American Christian woman that she wasn't, or was how she was dead set on divorce. When I chose to leave in 2007, she said, I think that would be great, and smiled when I brought it up to her that night after coming home from Hibbing, where I drove the school bus. I had enrolled my son in a private Christian school. I haven't even begun to tell you all the foolishness that ensued in our divorce, but one thing I probably didn't tell you is immediately upon her divorce, she yanked him out of the Christian school, put him back in a public school, and then complained he wasn't doing well in there. And I said, I told you he could live with me Monday through Friday, and you could have him on the weekends. And you said, no, I don't want that. It was only as time went by that it dawned on me the reason she wanted her son around was not because she felt such strong feelings for him. She didn't want to be all by herself, and she wanted to save face in front of all her female friends and make it look like I had left them both. In fact, a woman had told me, she said, you abandoned her and your son. I said, no, let me tell you what happened. She didn't want him staying with me Monday through Friday. And what proved that out in time is when he started having his own will and started seeing through his mother and not liking her, then she got really furious because then he didn't play into part of her little manipulative plan. It's sad what people do to kids, and it's not always the males that screw up kids. Sometimes it's women. My mother's effect on me, it took me into my late 30s before I finally broke the spell of that and told my mother where to put it. I have no fear of my mother, but for 30-something years of my life, I was terrified of her. No man, no boy should be terrified of their mother or their father. A respect that says, I don't want to cross my father's path because I respect him is different than I'm scared. So what we're doing in America's most Christian families, they're not mentoring their kids for Jesus Christ. That's all a bunch of junk that looks and sounds good on paper and in a Sunday morning message. When God doesn't build the house, I promise you this. If you did something out of the will of God, don't always think that God's going to suddenly turn around and do a fairy tale happily ever after. oftentimes what will happen is things will get worse and worse. The tension and the fires of life will be put on it to force you out. People get shocked when I say, when I made the decision to divorce her and I got away from her, I actually, for the first time in 14 years, felt the peace of God in my life again. That can't be. You divorced your wife. That must have been a false peace. This is what Christians do. They do all these mental gymnastics to put you on an exceeding guilt trip. Back to my friend Jeff, who decided to stay in the marriage he hated. You know how he dealt with the problem? He sold his house and built a Taj Mahal house number 2 with a complete studio, separate building outside, and just buried himself in that materialism and got himself into debt for somewhere close to $500,000. And I said, what are you doing? It was funny how self-righteous he was to me after I got a divorce. And I thought, man, we put up with you griping about your wife for 14 years and we were sick of hearing it, and we still supported you. You have been a materialistic, complete discontent person, burying yourself in buying all these antiques, architectural salvage, obsessing over your new house, bragging about your new house, showing it off to everybody, and you're always doing projects in there and adding this and adding that, and you love the attention you get, and you don't think there's anything wrong with that? He does not have a passion for Jesus Christ. He talks about it. And then I noticed as years went by, he started breaking fellowship with everybody. This guy stopped going to church. I'm going to have to break fellowship with him. This guy did this. This guy did that. He broke fellowship with me. I made a mistake. 2 years ago, I decided to call him up just to see how he was doing. That was a mistake. He went off. He condemned me for my divorce, condemned me for going after a woman in Hong Kong, blah, 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 because my ex had told him I was going after an Asian girl. And you know what I did with him? I said, hey, if you don't want to be around me, that's fine. And he kept going, and I put the phone down and hung up. I gotcha, Jeff. Gotcha. I don't feel any remorse for that. The thing I feel remorse for is how Christianity often goes astray depending on what church culture you go to. People yell and scream about divorce being so wrong, but they don't stop and think, which is worse? Beating the crap out of your wife because she's exasperated you so much and won't shut up and won't back down and won't submit and won't do anything right? Have you noticed that American Christian women don't have to follow the injunctions of Scripture, but they'll turn around and say, you're supposed to love your wife as Christ loved the church? Have you also heard men, have you heard Christian women say, I don't have to submit to my husband if he's not being godly? Show me, ladies, where it says that in the Bible, and I'll tell you, you're full of it. We've got an entire culture of women today that are very Jezebel spirit, very self-righteous, very narcissistic, and they are not going to change at all. And one of the biggest reasons for that is because the men in the church aren't being men and saying what they need to hear. Give me a pulpit, and I will blast this mentality of today's American woman and say, church women, you're not going to like what I'm going to say. I'm going to warn you right now. If you've got feminist vibes going through you, you might want to check that door over there and just walk. Because what I'm about to say is going to step all over your toes, because it's not politically correct and it's not going to be favorable to you, but it is biblical. I will be honest, I'm sick of most American women. They really are all about themselves, all about their materialism, all about their pets, all about their world, their agenda, and I look at what they're doing. I've been around enough women, and I think they're not contributing to the good of society at all, or anybody else. And they would get offended that I say that and say, man, you're a messed up dude. No, that is the truth. The sad thing is, is we live in a culture that has driven a lot of us to go online. I'm not antisocial at all. American feminist women, American women that are full of themselves, they're very antisocial. When you're in love with yourself and you're in love with materialism, you're going to be a social retard. Facebook is not social network, folks. Facebook is a girly thing. Well, look at all my pictures. Aren't I cute? Look at what I ate. Look at my doggy. It is selfishness to the power of 100. Or selfishness to the 100th power. I know people will tell me, well, I don't use Facebook that way. I use it to communicate, blah, blah, blah. I don't want to be too hard here. I'm not saying if you're on Facebook, you're demonic. But most of Facebook with the female population is look at me. See, this channel covers all angles. A lot of those blacks yelling and screaming about Michael Brown's death at his own hands. That wasn't his own. Yes, it was. His actions caused his own death. A lot of those blacks have had abortions. How come they don't have the same outrage? Oh, come on, that's my choice. No, you murdered a child. That baby in your womb was unarmed. What about that, hypocrites? You can say what you want. God's going to call you a hypocrite on that one. I guarantee it. Black women, you aborted your child and you're against a thug getting shot by the police, a police officer who was doing what he was supposed to do. Yeah, isn't this country rich with hypocrisy and double standard and bullcrap? Black women in America really need to be rebuked. The loudmouth, swagger, no one will tell me what to do. A woman running my stop sign calling me bitch. I tell you what, I think all American women that act like this need to have their pants dropped and need a nice hardwood paddle swat to the butt at least 3 or 4 times until they learn to cry again. Am I wrong? Or have American women gotten way too damn big for their britches today? And it's right there in the church. They just cover it a little better. They just throw some Jesus stickers all over it, but the same thing is going on. I'm not interested in most Christian women in the U.S. They scare me because they're not godly. They're not examples that I want to follow. I don't envy their so-called walk. They're childish. They're self-deceived. And I do hammer on this. I hammer on it because I see it right where I go. A very strong, sound, biblical teaching, preaching church. And I look at the women there. They're not contributing to any collective good. And they're raising narcissistic, spoiled brat children that can't shut up in the church when they're teenagers and 20-something-year-olds and be respectful. Something's missing. Oh, I moved downstairs. I was sitting up there this morning, and I was like, and there was a woman sitting in front of me. She kept turning around and giving me this look. And it's the daughter of one woman who always does talk to me. And I thought, these pretty women are just rude. Rude. Not a smile, not, hey, how are you? Nothing. And you hear women talk and their defense of that. Well, people are scared now. Get over your fear, babies. Not every man wants to rape and stalk and molest you and get down your shorts. Quit rating yourself that high. Sheesh. I'm sorry. The granddaughter came over here with her weird friend. Everybody tried to be nice to her, but she was so standoffish. And yet she had tattoos on her and this and that. And then I started thinking, okay, the granddaughter's in the Marine Corps. The granddaughter's never had a boyfriend. And then I watched throughout the evening as this girlfriend of hers is kind of like huddling up against her constantly. And then when she would talk to her, her eyes would just glow. Do you want me to help you with that? And it dawned on me, lesbian? I would never say that to the folks I'm living with. I think so. I think so. And it was really funny because I caught something. The 42-year-old man who actually went to Boulder to go pick her up brought her down here. And the man of the house said, he says, are you going to take her home? And the granddaughter jumps in, no, I'm probably going to take her home, or I might just take her to, and then she drifted off, and I thought, oh, to your place? And then it dawned on me, she would never feel comfortable telling her grandparents that she's into that lifestyle, and she would never let on that she is if she was. I'm not saying she is, but that's what I'm saying. American women are getting weird, folks. They're snubbing us guys. They're being rude to us guys. And you can't tell me they don't have a sex drive. And you can't tell me they're so full of self-control. Because I'll tell you what, look at the porn industry. A whole lot of American women are in on that one. For crying out loud, one of my viewers, or I don't even know if she's a viewer, but she added me for some reason, a black woman. And then she sent a video to me and others showing her, either her husband or her black boyfriend, naked and BFing each other. And I'm like, my gosh, who does that? The reason women are acting this way today, the reason they're rude, the reason they're hating males is not because of inequality, not because men are misogynistic, but because men have been bulldozed back into a corner, and men are too busy worshiping their damn pickup truck and their SUV and their self-importance and their dang football game than they are in standing up to these women and saying, no, you're not going to talk to me this way. And if you do, I will put you out that front door and lock it. We need to start standing up to these women. And I'm sorry. Even this woman of this house who was born in the 30s said to me, she goes, I know I can be a nag, and there's times that my husband would have had every right to slap me. I said, don't you consider that abusive? She goes, no. To be perfectly honest with you, there were times I was deliberately trying to get him mad so that he would do it and put me in my place. I said, are you serious? Maybe these young women want to take the cue from her. I don't advocate slapping women. There's a song by Steve Taylor that says, did you slap around the ladies for the camera? Did you slap them when the camera wasn't there? I think there was a song he did called Svengali. Steve Taylor was weird. He was a Christian rock artist, and he had some bizarre stuff, and I liked some of it. He had one song that was really so apropos to America. Two songs, actually. One was, This Disco Used to Be a Cute Cathedral. And it went something like this. This disco used to be a cute cathedral where they only play the stuff you're wanting to hear. That's a commentary on most American churches today. Don't offend anybody. And then there was another little ditty. It's a personal thing, and I find it odd that you would question my believing in a personal God. I'm devout, I'm sincere, ask my mother if you doubt it. I'm religious, but I'd rather not get radical about it. The old-time believers had timidity and grace, but this new generation doesn't know its place. You're entitled to believe, but the latest Gallup poll says you mustn't interfere. That's the government's role. Because when you throw your hat in the bowl ring, before you know, it's a personal thing. And when it comes to the day of the reckoning, he's going to tell them, it's a personal thing. Steve Taylor was weird, but he was cryptic, and that's why I liked his music. Mentally, I got it. People tell me, including white women and black women and women in particular, I like your channel because you have a pair. Wait a minute. The Korean woman I dated, her sister thought I was a misogynist. See, I wouldn't date that Korean woman's sister, but let me tell you, that woman, that sister, never got set straight by a man who's supposed to be a man. Feminism, I'm tired of people promoting it. Feminism is satanic, and I don't agree with it. Women are not equal with men. That is not what the Bible teaches. And when I say that, hear what I say. That doesn't mean men are superior. But you're not a man, and I'm not a woman. The two are supposed to be distinctly, uniquely, sexually different, physically different, mentally different. Men think logically. That's why they're asked to be pastors and teachers. Women think with their emotions. That's why the two need to come together to balance each other out. Because a man who thinks logically can be said to be unfeeling, and a woman who thinks with her feelings can be said to be irrational, and it takes the two to balance each other. Men, you need more feeling. Women, you need more logic. And you work with me, people. No sex is superior, but I'm tired, and I'm going to use a very coarse term. I'm tired of all these vaginas walking around in American society being bitches and being horrible to us males and just walking all over our dignity, and men just laying back and just accepting the materialism, accepting their SUVs and being in command of the remote control and pushing Jeep strollers with their designer babies in it. And men aren't being men and saying, you know what, honey? Shut up. You're out of line. Oh, he's abusive. He said, shut up. Yep. And I'm going to say it again if you don't knock it off. I'm going to tell you something. God does not look down on this stuff and behavior of today's women and endorse that at all. And nowhere does a woman have a right to call foul ball and say, my husband's not godly, therefore I don't have to submit. If your husband's telling you to transgress God's laws, then you have the right to say, I can't do that, hon. But this idea that you don't have to submit and show reverence to your husband because he isn't doing what you think he ought to do, that will not be found in the pages of Holy Writ. I will quote to you again what it says. Wives, see that you respect or revere your husband, even them that obey not the word, that they might be won over by your chaste, gentle behavior. There's no loopholes, ladies. If your husband is abusing you physically, leave the house and stay out of that house. But if your husband will not place you on a pedestal and cater to your narcissism, then grow up. It is not the man's job to please his wife in every single thing, including her narcissism. Husband's job is to be the spiritual head of the house, and that includes telling some scathing rebuke to his woman. Also, as far as women whispering and talking in the church, it says, let a woman keep silence in the church. Let her learn from her husband at home. Apostle Paul was talking about women gabbing during the service and interrupting everything, and stop it. And teenage girls, if I was a father, I'd take that daughter out right then and there. We'd go on the parking lot. If you want to continue talking in church, I will paddle your butt right up there in the balcony in front of everybody. Stick that in your pipe and smoke it, girl. Pacific, are you advocating violence? No. But what's happening in our culture is because everything has become out of bounds. I'm finding a dynamic taking place. And I've talked to enough men and women to talk about this, that when things get out of kilter, there's going to be a backlash. Men are sitting down, and one of these days they're going to wake up when women say, we don't even want you men around. And when women really start pushing on us men are going to finally react and snap and do things that women don't want them to do. We need men in the pulpit to speak the truth, and they're not doing it. When in Seoul, South Korea, they're hammering on the men in the marriage, not all of the problems in a doggone Christian marriage are related to the male. I am tired of that. Well, you're the head of the house. You can set the tone. No. A lot of women in marriages are setting the tone. And do you know why? Because they don't submit. Because they have a Jezebel mentality. We don't preach about the Jezebel spirit that dominates most American, yes, even Christian women today. I have women writing me that are saved that tell me, I see what you're saying about women. I try to love and respect my husband, and you're right. I had a woman some time ago write me, I stumbled onto your channel, and after hearing you talk about women and stuff, I realized I had to change because I wasn't showing my husband the love of my life. I wasn't being respectful to him, and I'm going to become a better wife. When you have a Christian woman writing me, telling me I'm a whack job and mentally ill and this and that, and I need counseling, and she's talking rude to me and all that, this is just a barometer of the culture of today's women. They think they're doing a service to God to talk to and behave and make those kind of accusations. No woman has the right to take on a man. That is not the woman's job. Oh, so Pacific, you're advocating for women to be mousy while men just run all over them. I did not advocate that. But other men need to step up to the plate when they see a man abusing his own wife and say, hey, Ralph, you're my friend, you're my brother, but I'm going to tell you, if I see you slap your wife one more time, I'm going to kick your butt. I'll take you out in the woods and I'll deal with you. Women, you need to let God have his rightful place through the Holy Spirit. It's not your job to play God and intervene. Well, my husband's a jerk, I don't have to submit to him. Oh, yes, you do. And you pray. And you show the side that you're supposed to show. And you don't realize it, but by you being meek and humbling yourself, there are actually some men out there that will say, whoa, I'm sorry. You've been loving to me and respected me, and I haven't been very nice. I apologize. Women don't realize it. When you fight and you bow up your back, you put us men in a defensive position. Men are designed to fight or flight. So when you start attacking your man, you're putting us in a fight or flight thing. And because we are male, you're going to end up getting hurt because you're not supposed to be provoking that in your husband. Men and enemies and bad, dangerous situations can provoke that in us, but wives should not be provoking that fight or flight thing in their husband at all, ever. End of story. I don't care if you call me a misogynist, a chauvinist. Go ahead. But it's the truth. Not that I'm those things, but that you are out of line if you don't submit to God's word on it. Most guys today on this channel are having a tough time finding a good date in America. And it's not because it's their fault. I don't have a problem being friendly. It's as if you want to have friends, be friendly. I am. But we're living in a culture that's on full tilt rebellion in every way. Women putting down men, women praising lesbian behavior, women secretly being closet lesbians and not telling anybody. I mean, it is rampant in this country. Not all lesbians look like Butch Dykes. A lot of them are very, very pretty women. Watch the way they interact together. You'll pick up on it real quick. They'll hide it in public, but, you know, how can two flaky women really get off? And isn't that great? It's like, man, how do they go off onto this stuff? And they're probably, you know, feeling each other up in a closet when they get home. I'm sorry, but everything has changed in this culture. And the thing is, there's teaching going on in our universities called women's studies that are teaching women that they are superior to males. They're hypocrites. You want to take away a woman's right. No, you want to take away all men's rights and deny us our manhood. And you want to strut around and say, and you can't do anything about it or I'll call the police. Nothing disgusts me more than out here in Lakewood when I see female cops who look lesbo. And I've had to call police in the past on neighbor problems, this and that. I didn't do anything wrong. And the lesbo cop says, "Put your hands where I can see them." I'm the one who called you. I know, but that women do not belong in authority. They do not. Authority is reserved for the males. The only authority a woman has is over her children unto the Lord. She does not have authority over men, does not have authority over her husband. And that goes for single women. If you're interested in a guy, you do not have the right to tell him off, and you do not have a right to try to control and dominate him. You are sinning. If you don't like the guy, say, "Hey, this relationship won't work out. Please don't call me. I won't call you." And you go on. You do not take him on. You don't call him names. You don't fight with him. You are out of the will of God. Rest my case. You see, there's chain of command. If the head of the house isn't doing his job, God's going to get us. Yes, there's a lot of abusive husbands, and wives don't get the justice that they should get. If you are in an abusive situation, and you'd better make sure you know how to define abuse, your husband raising his voice and yelling at you is not abuse, per se. If you're yelling and you're screaming and you're being impossible, of course he's going to raise his voice. Don't run back to your friends and say, "He verbally abused me." If your man's standing here calling you cunt and bitch and the F word and all that, yeah, that's not good. But you'd better ask yourself a question. Are you being all of those things? Because if you are, what in the world do you expect? I don't like that word cunt. I hate it. But I am starting to see that there's a class of women today that word does fit. It's an awful word. But you can't describe them any other way. They are malicious, mean, combative, in your face. And I'm thinking, why would any man marry a woman like that? And today's new crop of yuppie women, yuppie men are pussies. And I'm sorry to use a vulgar term, but they're pussies. Yuppie men buy the SUV and they push the designer stroller, and they're not the head of their house. Their wives are. It's the new repackaged American family. And you got these smart aleck little spoiled kids growing up that know nothing about headship and authority. It's crazy, dude. But I really get mad when preachers won't address women. It needs to stop where it's one-sided sexist speaking. Men need to stop being beat up in America's pulpits. And women need to be told the truth. Anti-social me? No. I have more social interaction with people on the internet than I do in an American society in my day-to-day world. Oh, I talk to a lot of people. But I'm talking about people who care, people I want to be with, people that I enjoy. They're on this internet. They're out of reach. Venus Star said, "I wish I could pay for your flight down here. I would cook your food. I wouldn't want you to have to spend a dime." How many American women do that for a guy? And by the way, she hasn't sent off any signals that she's romantically interested in me. She just offers that because that's who she is. I said, no, I'll pay for my flight. I would never make you do that. American women are all about themselves. What are you going to do for me? They're not doing anything for the men. They've learned to use their looks as, well, you might get laid by me if you really treat me right. That's lame. Then you turn yourself into an object to be used because that's all you got to give. And American women complain that all men are pigs. Well, guess what's helped tip the scales that way even more? You're all rude, women. You have nothing to offer. So we do. We look at your bodies and go, like my friend in Duluth, Minnesota said, Mr. Kuchowski, years ago. He was a med student. We both worked at Highland Plasma together, and he was a good friend of mine. He was not a Christian, and I was absolutely shocked in my 20s, and he says, Mike, women are no good except for effing. I said, Tom, wow, that's harsh. It's true, Mike. It's true. I can see why he got that way. He lived up in a part of the country, Chisholm, Minnesota, the Iron Range. You ought to see the women up there. They're scary. Miners' wives. Most of the women on the Iron Range are lesbian. Most. Part of it is because of the abusiveness of men. But our culture's blurring the lines of the sexes. I remember years ago they were telling girls it was okay to play with Tonka trucks and for boys to play with Barbies. When I was a kid, if I had a dolly in my hand, my other friends were like, Mike, what are you doing with the Barbie doll, man? Hold on, man, I'm tying it behind my dump truck. Oh, okay. Making gender neutral is not biblical. There's a lot of us on this internet because we find more camaraderie and more people that care, and we find people that are getting sick of this stuff, and we're speaking out. And what's really sad is that our modern media is not going to call up Pacific Ocean Asia and say, you know, we've seen you've had a successful YouTube channel and you talk about the issues. Do you think they're going to put me on The View? You think Barbara Walters, Diane Sawyer, Katie Couric, or who's the other one I can't stand? Diane Sawyer. I cannot stand that woman. Liberal to the core. Or the commentator Martha Raddatz or Cokie Roberts. Oh, gosh, I couldn't ever read their editorials. Liberal to the core. They don't want to spotlight this. If they did, they would make it all spun to make me look like a complete piece of walking garbage and just use it to incense a bunch of anger towards me. I don't want to be on the national news. If Fox wanted to do an interview with me in a favorable light, I would submit to that. But ABC, NBC, CBS, nope. I'd turn around and say, I'll tell you what, I'll do an interview for you, but you're going to give me $1 million to do it. You want to use me? I'll use you. Give me my money, and as soon as we're done with the interview, I'm getting on the first boat out of here, and I'll continue to make videos. No. That is a lie that people who are on the internet are antisocial. I will tell you something. Maharani's sister is drowning in anime. Every time I talk to her on Skype, they're sharing a bedroom because there was some water damage through a leaking pipe that created mold in the drywall, and her father's repairing her room. So she's sharing a room with her younger sister. And I can hear in the background all this laughing. I'm like, what is all that laughing? Oh, she's watching anime. She even told me one night that her own parents told her off, the sister saying, you know, you're getting too into this. I like some anime pictures, and I've watched a couple of anime things, but I am not a cult follower of it. And I want to say something to my viewers. Antisocial. A lot of young women and men are just checking out of the human race and drowning in anime and drowning in video games. I'm not against video games, except the violent crap, San Andreas, car theft San Andreas. I will always, and I know some of my viewers, you play that. I don't hate you as a person, but I don't like that stuff. That any industry would create something encouraging people how to steal cars just doesn't make sense to me. That we have a Hollywood making violent movies with sex scenes and everything. I don't understand that. And when Hollywood, when Columbine came down with Eric Harris and Dylan Klebold shooting up Columbine High School, not too far from where I live, and Hollywood says, well, we're not responsible for that. No, not at all. Basketball Diaries, anybody? We are the stupidest country in the world. Did you know that even Muslim countries don't allow our Hollywood over there? Because they said it's toxic. It's toxic to their belief system. Muslims have their problems, but they do have some form of morals that we don't even follow over here. And we call ourselves Christians. Do you know how many Christians I sat around that talk about the latest movie? And I'm like, why is it that Christians watch all this crap? They tied to Hollywood. They watch it. There's profanity, nudity, and hardcore gratuitous violence. I'm going to say something to my viewers. That is wrong. Why do people like seeing people fight and tear each other up? Even the medieval movies. I don't like it. The only fighting I ever liked was Swiss Family Robinson because it was all fake and staged and it was just clearly nothing. But today's movies are graphic. Now you got women with the medieval Xena the Warrior bra on walking around with her gun, going to take out the bad guys. I'm like, that ain't right. Do you know there's American men that think women are sexy like that? I don't. I don't at all. What's wrong with being a lady? Could somebody please tell me? Do you know in women's studies, women are taught that it's not cool to be ladies, that is beneath them? How many of my Christian viewers out here fail to realize that that's just nothing short of demonic? To deny the very thing that God made you to be, a lady. And men aren't faring well either. Leave me alone with my six-pack, my porn, my football game, my pickup truck, and I'm fine. Men are supposed to lead. Men are supposed to keep this stuff under control and be a force for good. But instead, American men are drowning on their own addictions. You know what's ugly to me is that bars, the women that go to bars, women that drink alcohol, women that smoke cigarettes, women that walk in with that brazen attitude, and men think that's funny. And a lot of American men have deliberately made their women the whole biker, bad girl image. Shame on the men. Bring them down to your level and turn them into a monster and a liability. Oh yeah, I just stepped on the toes of the bar chicks and the bikers. Oh well. No skin off my back. I'm not against people riding their motorcycles, but I'm just not into biker chicks. That's a whole nother video. Biker culture is different. And I could accept the biker culture more, but unfortunately there's just a lot of bad associated with the whole, bad Bob image and breaking traffic laws and being thugs on bikes. I don't go for that. And I know a lot of bikers that don't do that. I knew a woman in Minnesota who was a good biker. She even said, there's not a lot of us out there. I want community. Colorado is not a family-oriented place. I don't care what they say. I think it's funny that there's all this Christian ministry based in Colorado Springs. Go drive through Colorado Springs and you just don't see a Christian difference. There's a lot of ministries that focus on the family, Navigators, Campus, YWAM. There's a bunch of them down there. And for all the Christian ministry, I don't see any difference in the spending habits and materialism, absorption. And I'll tell you what, it's pretty sad when you go to a Muslim country and you can see the influence of Islam on a place. And yet you can go to these cities in America that claim to be Bible Belt and you can't see it. Churches everywhere, but you don't see change. Sunday school teacher was telling me that he went to Nashville and he said, you can go to church anytime from Saturday morning all the way through Sunday, 24 hours. I said, really? But I tell you what, if I were to live in Nashville, I'll bet you I wouldn't see any viable difference between that and Denver. It's very passé and comfortable to call yourself a Christian in this society, but actual transformation, a passion for Jesus that changes the way you do things, changes you so much that you downsize, that you sell that SUV and say, I don't need this. I don't need to be in debt for this. I'll buy that used pickup. I'll buy that used car. It's enough to get us around. Christians aren't living different than the world today. And that's why a lot of us are coming here. You can't get fellowship in church. You are a man looking for a woman to date. It's tough. If you're a woman looking for a man to date, you got a lot more choices than I do, but you got a lot of bad men out there. Anyways, that's just my thoughts for Sunday afternoon. come out of church and the polar plunge rolled in, and I'm like, wow, why does this weather change abruptly when I got to go to work the next day? We need to trust God. He has a plan for Pacific. I don't know what it is, and can I be honest? I'm scared. Because I tend to always think that God's going to be against me. And that came from my mother pounding it into me. You're no good, you're no good, you're no good, baby, you're no good. I still have to fight that. But God loves us. And God didn't just save us and say, okay, you're saved. I'll see you in eternity. Peace out. He doesn't do that. I will never leave you nor forsake you. Even if my eyesight didn't pass, if I get new glasses or whatever, it doesn't pass, God's not sitting there on the throne and go, uh-oh. And you know what I did for the first time since that eye test in September? I said, okay, God, whatever you want to do with me, you have the right. I have no say. Take care of me. Protect me. Watch over me. Lead me. Have a purpose for my life. Provide for my needs. He will. We need to wait on God. You can run around and do everything in your own strength, and it's going to get you in trouble, but I want to see God open the doors. Whether it's a viewer saying, you know what, I'd like you to be part of our ministry. We'll pay you this much a year, and you got a place to stay in. I'm going to let God do that. Somebody wrote me saying they wish I could come to Tennessee and speak in some place. I would love to, but because I got a job, I can't. And I need to read that message again. I want God to open the doors. I don't want to manipulate and try to put ads on my thing, which they're going to put them on there anyway, and try to make money, pennies on the dollar. It's like, Lord, you know my heart. Help me to follow you and submit to you and trust you, and you just lead. And he will. This is Pacific, signing off. Bye-bye.